If we could just pick up where Mr. Strand started with a comment that the impact of what's happening to farmers and to traders in the livestock sector is a discrimination. Could you elaborate on that? Is this a purely economic discrimination?
Mr. Paisley, thank you for the question. I think most of the pedigree societies, their main herd books are run on the mainland, and all our breed societies are UK breed societies. And with a restriction, the main restrictions are trade. Mr. Chair already asked the question about online sales stimulating trade and allowing things to continue as normal. I think for breeders to establish where they are currently within their own breed and where their standing is and the performance of their animals, they need to stand side by side in a live event to see how they genetically compare with their compatriots. So trade is the biggest barrier, but absolute full access to the UK herd books is slightly restricted with the fear of travelling, I think. And to be fair, the concern of travelling is driven by trade fear.
Thank you. Mr. Stocker, you were talking about the elite herd bloodlines that are so important to the sales process, in particular with sheep trade, and also this affects our other questioners. Could you just give us a slight indication of the record prices that Northern Ireland livestock attracts?
Yes, of course, Mr. Paisley. Thank you for that question. In 2019, there was a record price that was achieved for Suffolks of 43,000 guineas for one animal sold to Northern Ireland. And in the following year, in 2020, that top price again was from a Northern Ireland breeder back to a breeder in Scotland with a top price of 50,000 guineas. So, these are really high value animals.
And those really high value animals, they couldn't achieve, I think the chairman made it clear that you wouldn't be able to achieve that in a local market setting. It's having it at a national setting that you're able to achieve that. But would you see that under major threat as a result of these rigmaroles that you now have to be put through?
Absolutely, I would. I think this would, for those breeders in Northern Ireland invested for many years in high genetic livestock, this will devastate their businesses. If they can't sell back into that high value GB market, they will not receive those prices on the island of Ireland, and it will just finish their businesses, to be honest. There's no way forward. And they've invested, they would have paid those sorts of values for buying in stock in the past, and they need to continue to be part of that trade.
Yeah, thank you. That is very important. Thank you for that. And very briefly, Mr. Martin, in terms of traceability, isn't it the case that Northern Ireland's livestock has probably the most efficient and best traceability on these islands? And is it not then peculiar that animals that have great traceability, if they're moved to another part of the United Kingdom, suddenly they get trapped and that traceability is disregarded?
Thank you, Mr. Paisley. Yes, you are correct, and I would say the tagging structure across the EU is standard. So I don't think all calves are identified within 15-20 days have been born. And on that unique identifier tag, we have the actual herd of origin that the animal was born into, and then a sequential number of where that animal ranks and with date of birth or whatever, the most recent calf has got the most recent tag in sequence. Those animals, when they move from GB to NI, they are now been requested by dairy officials to remove the primary tags that was put in at birth and a new tag inserted, which bears reference to the new holder and his herd origin and his next tag in sequence. Now, just take a step back. Whenever the calf is tagged at birth in GB, that tag number is entered into a series of databases. Not just, the UK doesn't have one database for everything. It has a series of databases. And in those databases, we have the pedigree information, we have production information, we have genetic information, progeny information, parental information, animal health information, and all that information is collected in separate databases, all linked back to the single unique identifier that was put into that animal at birth. Whenever that animal is then moved to Northern Ireland, those identifiers are removed and a new identifier put in. There is inevitably going to be a considerable loss of traceability to that initial information. So yes, you are correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paisley. Okay.
So do you think potentially this new system, Mr. Bruce, this new system then undermines the integrity of the UK's traceability and food security program? Is that right?
Yeah, undoubtedly. Yeah, no question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your lenience.